welcome back to the studio. It is August. I can't believe it's August already, but it is. It's just shocking to me. I just sent a newsletter out earlier this week, and I just cannot believe that it's August already. Some of you may want to tell me welcome back to the studio because you may have noticed that other than Flower Farm, we didn't do a whole lot over the month of July. Well, at least not on YouTube anyway. We did a whole lot over the month of July, just not anything you could totally see. So I'd love to bring you up to speed on that, but let's not get off track here. Why we're here today is to celebrate the Flower Farm, and we are working in it's month 8 for us, our August month, and we're working on 2 blocks today, and they are behind me. So I'm really excited to talk about that. This month, we are doing block number 9, which I believe, is that our Paperwhite? Yes, block number 9 is our Paperwhite. It just happens to be the last of our 16-inch blocks. It's over here, right behind me. That's the last of our 16-inch blocks. And remember I said to you in the beginning, as you get further along in the book and higher in number of block, they get smaller and smaller, and we tend to make more of them. So because they're smaller and smaller, they get kind of filled in throughout the quilt as little filler blocks. So we started with 24-inch blocks. We went to 16-inch blocks. This is the last of our 16-inch, our Paperwhite block number 9. And then we're going to do block number 10, which is called our Star Jasmine. That's going to be over this shoulder right there. Our Star Jasmine is the first of our 8-inch blocks. So for our 16-inch block, our Paperwhite, we're going to be making 2 blocks today. And for our 8-inch block, we're going to be making 3 blocks today. So when you do your cutting instructions from the book, it's going to have you cut enough to be able to make 2 blocks and 3 blocks respectively. Now remember, if you're following along this whole time, this is easy. You got 5 blocks to make, and I have to tell you that these are pretty easy blocks. The 8-inch blocks are super simple. It's less than 4 steps. I'm going to walk you through anything that I think is weird in the book that might trip you up, but otherwise, I think you're not going to have any issues at all in getting these done. And if you're just now finding us, you can start anytime. These videos live on the internet forever, as they say. So all you have to do is roll over to our Flower Farm playlist. That's at Cabin Quilters on YouTube. Just hit over to the playlist button, look for the Flower Farm playlist. You can see the whole list. You can start from the very beginning with our fabric selection and move on. And for those of you that are wanting to jump in and you've gotten the book, but you're just kind of waiting to start, why wait? Just hop in. Nobody knows when you started. Nobody knows when you finished. So you can do more videos per month, less videos per month. It's really up to you. These videos are just here to help you. So don't feel like you can't get started anytime. You absolutely can. And I did get a lot of emails from people like, oh, I wish I had known this from the very beginning. It's okay. No one knows you didn't know from the very beginning. Just hop in and join us, and we're going to get started. So without further ado, if you want to watch the video on how to do block 9 and block 10 of our Flower Farm block of the month, just stick around and let's work on them together. So glad that you stuck around to watch us do our block 9 and block 10. These are pretty simple blocks this time. They didn't take a whole lot. I just needed to pay a little bit more attention to the cutting this time because we don't have a 1.5 measurement. So you just want to be careful with your cutting because we are using 3/4 and 1/4 inch measurements with our cutting this time, but otherwise super easy. There's a couple little things to look at, and we'll start with those, but I thought I would just bring you up to speed on a few changes here at the studio. So the first and biggest change that you may notice is our logo has changed, and I'll stick the new ones up here on the video so that you can see it. One is very colorful, one is just navy, but this is our new brand mark for our company. So you may have noticed before that we were Cabin in the Woods Quilters. About 3 years ago, we moved to the lake at our Lakeside Lake and Leisure Quilt Retreat Center. That's where we exist now. So we're no longer in a cabin in the woods anymore. So we very quietly did away with the in the woods part of our logo. So we spent a lot of time doing that. And the other thing you may notice is our cameras are going to be a little bit different. Some you'll notice, some you won't. We moved things around. We added new cameras, new lights. So there will be a few different things you'll be looking at and a new machine. Oh, I forgot. The other thing that we did, if you follow along at all with the comment section in the videos, we usually make a really long list of products. Anything that you see, because it's affiliate income based and it helps the channel, anything that you see in the videos get listed on that, that link, and it got to be tedious every month to do that. And so now we have an Amazon storefront. So when we go to the storefront, you'll see, if you click on the link, anything that's available from Amazon will be at the Amazon link. Anything available on the store will be on the store link and will be listed. So there's lots of things there, and we're updating our website now, and we will be having an affiliate link page as well on the website. So you'll be able to find things like our ambassador products that I'm an ambassador for. So you can get to those links as well. And then if those are products that you think you might like to own, there will be cost-saving links and codes, coupon codes, and things like that that are available on that site. The other thing you may notice if you go out to the storefront over on Amazon, you'll also notice that we have a retreat section as well, because when people are here and visiting me in-house at the retreat center, they ask about things like, what are these lights on your table, and where do I get these sheets that you use, and all those kinds of things. So you'll see things like that as well. First block that we're going to do this particular month is block number 9, which is our Paperwhite block. As I said before, it's our last of our 16-inch blocks. Let's look at what we cut to make those blocks. All right, here we have all the fabrics that we cut for this particular block. So there were 5 fabrics that we have for this block. In the book, you'll notice that the first fabric she shows is a Secret Garden Navy. So that's a floral. And so I chose this guy right here for my floral, for that center, the center triangles of the block. They're all going to be made out of this fabric here. We have a secondary fabric. So our next 2 fabrics actually go together to create that star point. One is a navy and one is a lighter blue. So here is my navy and my lighter blue. Those are the pieces that we're going to use to make that. There's also, in the book, it shows as a pink center. Mine is a red center. Here's my little center pieces that we need for that. And then we have our backgrounds. We have a slightly larger square and a slightly smaller square of our background. So that's all we need. So let's take a look at how everything goes together for this block. So here's our floral piece, which is going to be here. That creates that center square. There's our center. Mine is red, shows pink in the book, but there's our center there. These are our flip and fold corners, so in the center, so super easy. So this particular part of the design is super easy to do. We'll talk about that. And then we have our points here, which are part of our blue and navy. So that requires us to make a light blue and a dark blue half square triangle, and then we're going to create that into a quarter square. Here's the quarter square, and that when we cut those apart, we'll have one section going in one direction, one going in another direction, and that's what we use to alternate the corners. So it's a pretty easy block to do. There is a little spot that might trip you up a little bit if you're not paying attention in the book, so I will show you what that illustration looks like. So let's look at block number 10, which is going to be our Star Jasmine block. Our Star Jasmine block consists of 4 fabrics. In the book, they show as a burgundy, medium pink, light pink, and a floral. Obviously, I'm not using any pink. So my outer floral, which essentially is a small floral background, is this guy right here. So all of my background pieces have all been done out of this cream colored geometric pattern. I then have a very pale pink center is what shows in the book. I chose to make my center out of this red. Then there is a medium print. The medium print, the medium pink, or our fabric number 2, is really the majority of the block. It's what stands out the most in the block, and I chose this right here. And then for the final part of the block, we have this very strong center star because it is the Star Jasmine, and that's created with these little squares. So we went as dark as we could with that print. And yes, it is a print. It is a garden pin dot variety, and it does have all the red, the white, the light and medium blue in it as well, but it's pretty starkly strong dark, so I thought it gave a nice contrast between the center print and this print. So here's the block up close. So you can see we have this very strong geometric outside border, which I think adds a little more to the busyness of the block because we have so much going on in the background. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. These are 8-inch blocks, so they're going to sort of be tucked into the quilt. Anything that's in the 8 and the 4-inch variety are going to be some of our filler blocks because we have these huge blocks. So here's our very strong star point around the outside with our dark fabric, our little plaid in the center. And then you can kind of see what I'm talking about how this print works in the block. So it's sort of set together because the print itself is a blue, white, red rail fence type print or a stripy type print. Some of the blocks are turned upright or on point, and some are set just in their standard. And so putting these alternating throughout the block gives the block the sort of the look of it being pinwheels. So it adds a lot of motion to the block. And this was a very tough print. Even though it was part of the fat quarter bundle, it was a very tough print to really use in this particular quilt because everywhere I used it was either a flip and fold corner or something like that. So this gives us an opportunity to use it in a nice way where it gives the idea or the effect of being a pinwheel. So I think when this goes into the block, into the quilt rather, you'll notice that a lot of the other blocks have a very strong light colored background, and this one will sort of fit in with that. So I think just being able to transition between the backgrounds of the larger blocks and the backgrounds of the smaller blocks, I think this graphic print will work really nicely. And this block, super easy to make. It looks more difficult than it is with all these flip and fold corners. It's really simple, and it went together probably the easiest of the blocks I've put together so far, if I'm honest. It's really only four steps, and the fourth step is assembling the blocks. Without further ado, let's get started working on the actual blocks. Let's go start block number 9.
All right, I want to take the time to show you a little piece of the book because I want to show you where the drawings can get a little bit confusing on this particular block. So let's take a look at the actual picture of the block because I think that's where our eye naturally goes when we're looking at the book. And you can see that in the drawing, you notice this navy floral that's in the center of the block. You can see the light blue and dark blue blocks really clear, and that box in the center is the navy floral. And then if you look at the drawing, the sketch drawing doesn't show that navy floral. It shows a very slight difference between the navy blue and the dark blue. It's almost imperceptible when you're looking at the book. So I just want to point out that this is why you want to label your pieces A, B, C, D, E, because the sketch in the book is a little hard to tell based on color. So we can look at each drawing and be able to tell which color they are by looking at the letter B and C. And that'll keep you from getting confused since the floral that's marked in the photo is also showing as a navy blue. Get to step number 2A, there's another little spot where it's really hard and confusing when we go to put the next piece on, which angle it's going. I know the book's a little blurry, and we'll show it again when we get to that part, but it's very important that you lay your part exactly right, because if you don't, we won't get the desired outcome in step 2C. And then you can see it looks like navy and light blue, and then we move to step 3. It also looks like navy. That's that part where that floral's gonna go. And I just don't want you to get confused. So I'll point it out as we go, but I wanted to show the actual drawings so that you know not to get confused in that part. All right, our next step is to go ahead and take our B squares and our C squares, which are going to be my navy blue and my light blue. We're going to draw a diagonal line down the center of the square because it's so large. And then we're going to stitch them together 1/4 of an inch on either side of the line so that we can make our half square triangles. This block starts with those half square triangles. So that'll get us to the point where we can then trim those down. So let's put our 2 squares together, making sure everything fits. And then we'll sew 1/4 of an inch on the side of one side of the line, then turn it and sew on the other side of the line, just like we would make our half square triangles. And these are pretty easy. I'm obviously only doing 2 because I've already made one of the blocks, but it's basically 4 half square triangles, and then we're gonna cut them apart. Once we get them done, we're gonna cut down through that center line, and then we're gonna use our Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer to go ahead and cut them down to the size that we need. All right, for my next trick, I'm gonna show you how to use the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer. So I'm going to find the measurement we need to cut these. It says to trim to 5 inches. And I'm going to lay the sewing line down on the seam line on the ruler. Then we're going to trim up the sides and cut the dog ears off. So right there on that seam line. And then we'll cut the dog ears off at the same time we trim them. And we're going to trim them before we open them up and press them open. So we'll trim it beforehand. We're going to do all of the triangles this way. I'm going to go ahead and finish cutting these, cutting the dog ears off, and then I'll meet you back here. All right, now all of our cutting and pressing is done, and we have to lay down with the next square. So the next step, I'm going to put these blocks in exactly the position that is shown in the book, get my background squares out, and then we're going to draw a diagonal line through those background squares so that we can then add them to the half square triangles we've already made. So let's get that done really fast. So while I am speed deming drawing the lines on the backs of these blocks, what we're going to do next is we're going to lay our block with the diagonal line just like it shows in the book. So you can see I have them laid out like the drawing in the book with the navy down on the lower left and the blue on the upper right. So we're going to take the diagonal line from our background square that we just drew on, and we're going to put it in the opposite direction of the seam line that shows on the previous block. So you can see I'm pulling it like it is in the book, where it's just slightly away from that that seam, so you can see. So that's where the drawing is kind of hard to see, but once you get it in the opposite direction of that seam line, you're going to stitch 1/4 of an inch on either side of that line, just making sure the seam doesn't fold over. And then once you're done, take it off the machine and just check and make sure that your 1/4 square triangles has both prints, the light and the dark, on both sides. Obviously it will if you sew it right the one side. And then that's how we're going to do all the rest of the blocks. So it doesn't matter which way you start as long as it's the opposite direction of the seam line of the previous block. So let's get those done and come back to the next step. So once that's all done, we're going to cut again right down through that center line. So we have 2 half square, 1/4 square triangles, I guess you'd call. And then we're going to use our Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer again to trim them up. All right, once they're done and we've trimmed them and pressed them, we're going to wind up with 2 stacks. and I'm going to kind of show you each stack will have the navy in the opposite side, blue in the opposite side of the other stack. You'll notice them. So you can see here both cream colored triangles are in the upper left, and you can see half the blocks have navy in one area and the other half of the blocks have the navy in the other area. That's going to help us make our corner triangle. They're going to go together kind of like this. So our next step in this process is to add our A squares, that really crazy navy looking drawing there, our A squares to our background. So I'm going to draw the diagonal line in the back of our background squares, and then I'm going to create these again, sewn 1/4 inch on either side of that center line, make our half square triangles, and then I'm going to cut them apart and use our Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer again to trim them to the size they need to be so we can add them into the block. And then there's only one more step left before we put everything together. All right, our last step is to take our last set, those center squares. We're going to add those to the white side or the background side of our half square triangles that we just trimmed. So we're laying it down right even with the corner, and then we're going to sew diagonally corner to corner right there so that we can just not 1/4 inch on either side, just straight through that center line. And then that will create that diagonal line in the center of the block. So this is going to be a stitch and flip. We're going to stitch corner to corner, fold open, press, and then trim out the seam allowance in the back. And we're going to do that to all 4 of those blocks. And there it is right there. And once those are done, we're ready to assemble those corners. All right, so now that all of those blocks are done, we're ready to assemble those corners. And I said the way the drawing goes together, you assemble them all sort of as a corner, and you put 4 corners together to make the block. So we need our background squares for this. And these are going to be 4.5 inches. So I'll show you exactly how this block goes together. We'll put our corner square. Then we have our 2 alternating 1/4 square triangles that we need to put in. Our navy is going to go up against our background square on the top with the cream going in the upper corner. Then we have the cream going in the lower corner to put on the other side. And then right there in that last little spot, we have our small square going towards the center. We're going to assemble all of these 4 pieces just like that. All of them are going to be assembled the same way. So we can go ahead and stack those fabrics up and just start putting them together and creating all the corners exactly the same, right? So I'm just going to lay those down right the way they need to go, and then I can assemble all the blocks exactly the same way. And once those corners are done, then we just put the corners together to make the square. So now that my corners are done, it's very easy to put the block together. All you do is take one corner, turn the next corner this way, that creates the top of the block, repeat it again for the bottom of the block, so that these little angles go together. And then we'll make the same thing for the bottom of the block, spin it around and add it to the bottom. And then your block is done.
All right, friend, that was pretty simple, huh? Here's our second one of our Paperwhite blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and tack it up right here. There we go, look pretty good. So that's what I was trying to say about these blocks. So even though we have to make 5 of them this month, usually we make 4 or less. These are super simple to do. It's 4 steps. The 4th step is actual block assembly, so it's pretty simple. Our next block, block number 10, which is our Star Jasmine block, gonna go together just as easy as this one, I think. Just a couple of things to note. So let's go over to the sewing machine and we'll get that one started as well.
All right, so to start this block, we're going to start step 1 with the corner. We need fabric piece number E of the background and F and our fabric number C. Now C is a square and fabric F is not a square. So let me show you what that looks like when you put the block together. So you're going to have your rectangle on top. You're going to have your little square of C. And then next to that, you're going to have this little rectangle. And it's going to be very apparent it's a rectangle because on one side, it's going to actually fit the square. So you can see there with the tip together, it matches the size of the square. But if I turn in the other direction, it doesn't. It's a little longer. So make sure that you're butting up the part that matches the square up to the edge of the square. If you pick up piece number F and it looks longer than the square, you're sewing it in the wrong direction. So there it is right there where it's a little longer than the square. So make sure you're attaching them together on the side that fits. And you go ahead and put together all of the F pieces and the C pieces. We'll just do that in a little assembly line. And then we can, once those are sewn together and pressed, we can add that rectangle to the top of it. All right, now that we're done attaching all those little pieces together, we're gonna add that rectangle to the top in an assembly line. When you add the rectangle to the top, make sure that C square is on the right-hand side. That's where you need it. So just keep adding, make sure the square's on the right-hand side, and then add the rectangle to the top and just sew all those together and we'll come back. All right, for the next step, step 2, you're gonna need your B pieces, which are not a square, and then you're gonna need your G squares and A squares. So your G squares are gonna be background, and your A squares are gonna be your dark piece, or in my case, they're my dark navy little squares. And then we're gonna look at the book to show you the seam allowance so you can see which direction your little rectangles need to be. They're going to be 3 inches across the top and 3 1/4 down. So you have to make sure that you're sewing your cream colored to the top and your dark ones, your smaller squares on the bottom, and that they're upright rectangles. So let's look at the sketch in the book and we'll be able to tell the difference. So, and how you'll know is you can see the seam allowance in the next block, which is a square, that we have a small seam allowance on the top and bottom of that step 3. But in step 2, you have a small seam allowance on the bottom and a large seam allowance on the top of step 2. That's an indication that the squares are a little bigger. And then that is a rectangle in that book. So you can see it says 3 by 3 1/4. So just make sure they're oriented the correct way when you go to add those top squares. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our rectangle, which is upright, and we're gonna add a cream colored square to the top, and then we're gonna put a darker square, the smaller square, on the bottom opposite corner. Doesn't matter which corner you start with, as long as you do opposites, and you're gonna sew corner to corner on the squares. And then once you get all of those done, you're going to press them, flip them open, and then cut the seam allowances out of the back, and then we'll add the squares to the opposite corners. And now that we've done all of that and we've trimmed out all the seam allowances from the back, whoops, I caught a triangle there. We're gonna add the opposite squares to the top and bottom. Make sure your piece is aligned as an upright rectangle, 3 inches across the top, and 3¼ down the side. So don't put it in the wrong corner. So I just showed you that there. So the difference. So now we're gonna add the square across the top, add the little squares on the bottom. So I'm constantly checking to make sure the orientation is correct before I add the next square, because once you sew them and cut them, you can't fix it. So we just want to make sure the orientation's in the right direction. Just set a ruler. If you don't have a ruler on your sewing table like I do, just set a ruler next to you and make sure that your 3-inch goes across the top. And we'll finish those and come back when they're done. All right, those are done. So they're all trimmed out on the back, and I'm just going to align them, make them look nice. So the next piece that we need is our D square, and we'll use the rest of those A squares that I already have out. So let's grab our D square, and we'll this is our center. And then this one's pretty easy because we're just gonna add those A squares all around the outside. This is a square. It gets all the same points all the way around it, so you can't get confused. So we're just going to put a blue square in one corner, and then in the opposite corner, sew them all, press them, trim out the back, and then we'll come back and do the opposite corners. So let's just get all those done. So we'll sew corner to corner and then keep doing that to all the corners. And you can sew opposites first, then do your pressing, trimming, all of that, and then come back and do the opposite, the other two opposite corners. So now that we're done with those, this one's very much like the other block that we did. Once all the centers are done, all you need to do is add those blocks together. The last step is block assembly. So we have those center pieces, which are rectangles, are going to go on the top of the center square, the sides of the center square, and the bottom of the center square. And that's what gives us our Star Jasmine all the way around. And then the rest are corner squares. So I'm just going to take, obviously I'm working 2 blocks at the same time, so I'm just going to take them and pile them up, and that way I know exactly how they need to be assembled. So that center little square there, that colored square, is going to go into the center on all 4 corners. And then once we lay that out, all we have to do is sew our rows together. So let's do that and we'll get all finished.
All right, we got our other 2 blocks done. So here it is right here. Don't they look gorgeous? They're beautiful. And I love, they kind of look like, from back here, looking at them, they kind of look like little confetti blocks. You know, they're confetti. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I love that they're so different from the backgrounds on these bigger blocks. So let me show you what I mean by that. So when I go to assemble the big quilt, there's definitely a difference in the backgrounds here. So I think it'll make it a little bit more interesting to put those onto the quilt. So anyway, that is the end of our month 8, right? August. Our 9th block and our 10th block. I'm telling you, you've made such progress. I'm so proud that you stayed with us this long, and we're just cranking along. This is going to be great. We're going to have it done by the end of the year, and that's a big deal because it's 18 blocks. It's a lot of sewing, and I'm just very proud of you, and I can't wait to see what your quilts look like when they're done. Don't forget that you can continue to post photos on Instagram, #Flower Farm with Penny. You can tag me on Instagram at Cabin Quilters. You can also put it #Cabin Quilters, #Flower Farm with Penny. Can't wait to see what you guys have done. That's living in the description box as well if you forget. And I'm excited to see what you're doing so far and love seeing the pictures when they come up. And you can tag me, you can email me, you can do whatever. Don't forget, if you haven't had an opportunity to sign up for the newsletter, our August newsletter talks all about what is upcoming in 2027 for our retreats. We're doing quilt therapy retreats. If you want to learn about our quilt therapy retreats, you got to head on over to the website and click on the newsletter and sign up for that, and then we'll keep talking about that. So we just sent information out about quilt therapy retreats. We're going to the Caribbean in January, so if you're interested in going on a once-in-a-lifetime trip to the Panama Canal, we're also going to the Bahamas, Aruba, let me think, Colombia, the Grand Cayman, and always forget that one, Costa Rica. And there's going to be some wonderful excursions that you can go on. We have the whole schedule up, so there's lots of class days. We have quilt class on the very first night at sea. It's going to be great, and I'm excited to go. It's a beautiful trip. It's a long trip. It's, I think, 13 days, 12 days, something like that, and it's going to be great, and it's right in the middle of January to the end of January, so if you live someplace cold, you can go someplace warm and hang out with me and Terri from Purple Moose. And then we're going to have a great time. We're going to have a great time on the ship. We're going to have a great time at shore. It's going to be awesome. Also, I just posted in the newsletter, we have an opening that has just popped up in our September retreat. So if you're interested in coming to the Pickle Dish retreat in September, we have 2 open spaces. We'd love to fill it, and I'm anxious for you to come. And you can find out all about that at cabinquilters.com. And just click on the page that says Lake and Leisure Retreats and look for the September retreat, and you'll find out all the information you need. And you can ask for a contract if you'd like. So thank you so much for being so patient with me over the last July when we had so many things going on. I forgot. We're also going to do some Zoom workshops. I have not put the dates up on the website yet, but I have gotten an overwhelming response to our videos of Conversations with Conrad. So we are doing Conversations with Conrad live to answer questions on how your AI tools can help you in your business life, your personal life, all those kinds of things, and make you more productive, taking away some of the tasks, or at least assisting with some of the tasks that burden all of us, that keep us from doing the things that we love. So if you're interested in that, definitely sign up for the newsletter. Keep an eye out for upcoming dates for Zoom classes. I put together a huge workbook of things you can try. And this is not, you don't need a computer degree. This is not coding and decoding. This is just practical ways to use AI in your daily life and in your business life. So if you're interested in something like that, you can check out all the information on the website as soon as we get it. Sign up for the newsletter on the website, and then you'll be alerted when we're getting ready to do new things. So until next time, I hope you're having a great time at the flower farm. Thanks for sticking around with me till the end of the video. And I just want to say, every day, just thank you so much for watching, and happy quilting.